that gets solved is Canada should honestly become our 51st state. We wouldn't have a northern border problem. We wouldn't have a tariff problem. Canada would be great as our cherished 51st state. You wouldn't have to worry about borders. You wouldn't have to worry about anything. And by the way, Canada is very highly taxed, and we're very low tax. We're considered a low tax nation because of me, because I cut the taxes so low. So the people of Canada would pay much less tax. It makes a lot of sense. And by the way, when you take away that artificial line that looks like it was done with a ruler, and that's what it was. Some guy sat there years ago and they said, rah. Well, when you take away that and you look at that beautiful formation of Canada and the United States, there is no place anywhere in the world that looks like that.
Elizabeth, so many people have been thinking and saying, oh, Donald Trump's joking about Greenland. He's not really serious. This is opening negotiations, or the Panama Canal, or fill in the blank. But especially Canada, that was always dismissed as a joke. Prime Minister Trudeau, caught in a hot mic moment, told his advisors and the people close to him, he's not joking. We have to take this threat seriously. And certainly yesterday, in the middle of an economic collapse, Donald Trump goes back to saying we wouldn't have this tariff problem if you all would just agree to be our 51st state.
It is very hard to believe, but he seems to be increasingly serious. The strange thing, though, that is what it's done, it's made, the Liberal Party is won in Canada, and should Canada become part of the United States, there would never be a Republican president elected again, because it's a very liberal country, and they would all be Democrats. It's loopy. People still seem to think that he's doing this just for effect, that he is trying to get major concessions out of Canada. But right now, it has had the opposite effect in Canada. He is, and America is increasingly unpopular in Canada, obviously. Same thing with Greenland. I think, although there seems to be, Greenland wants to be independent from Denmark, and would also welcome close relations with the United States. So that is less crazy than Canada. But right now, that's where the president is, and there's a whole big question about, which also business executives are having. It's how. They didn't take him seriously about this tariff, of the tariffs he was going to impose. They didn't think he was going to do it. They thought it was just negotiations. And it turns out he is serious, at least for now, and they are very, very rattled, and they're calling the White House in a panic.
Well, I mean, I just don't know how anybody could be surprised. This is something that, again, he's said he was going to do this for 40 years, and I've been hearing from people on Wall Street. I've been hearing, talk to CEO, they're shocked. Can you believe? Look, where have you been for the last year? He's promised to do all of these things. Oh yeah, well, and on tariffs, he's been talking about it for 40 years. So again, these CEOs found out. Yeah. I mean, he meant what he said. And so I don't want to hear them say, oh, I'm so shocked. Yeah. I'm losing money.
There's a lot of gobsmacked CEOs and business leaders saying, I didn't think he would do this. And I think increasingly people are understanding that he is serious about many of the ideas that he has put on the table, that he did during the campaign. Yeah. And I will say, tried our best. I mean, if people are constantly watching news organizations that follow only what Trump says and not necessarily the facts, then they will find out the hard way.
Well, I mean, Jonathan Meir, we've had people on this show, regulars on this show, that said, oh, my God, I'm surprised he actually did this. He's been saying he was going to do this since 1987. So if you are a CEO or if you've somebody that's invested in the market, we said it here repeatedly, he was serious. Be careful with the economy. We have the strongest economy in the world. Don't screw around and find out. You have to be careful. We've said it day in, day out, day in and day out. And you actually talk to CEOs, and investors and people on Wall Street who are shocked that Donald Trump's actually doing what he said he was going to do on the campaign and for 50 years.
Yeah, the Wall Street and business leaders sort of made a bet this past campaign that Trump would make these promises during the year, and some things, the pro-growth, cutting taxes alike, they approved of. Like, he'll do that. But he also talked about these tariffs. He talked about slashing immigration, things that these business leaders opposed. But the bet they made was, oh, that's just rhetoric. That's just bluster. That's just thing he says to get the crowd cheering at a rally. He won't follow through on that. Well, that's bet. They're wrong. That's what's happened here. And we have learned, first of all, as you point out, tariffs, his belief in tariffs is one of his few really consistently held ideologies. He's done that since the 1980s. But more than that, we have learned from his first administration, and particularly this past campaign, when he makes these promises, he tends to follow through. He tells us what he's going to do. He's actually far more transparent than people want to give him credit for. There's not a lot of hidden hand here. There's not a lot of, if ever, a 3- or 4-dimensional chess. This Donald Trump, when he says he's going to do it, more times than not, he does. And we're seeing the impact now. We have, as we'll get into in a moment, the markets again rattled by these policies. It's chaotic. It's inconsistent. It seems to change by the hour. And we know, Joe and Mika, that we've had business leaders. Steve Ratner, again, joined us yesterday saying how much it's about consistency and predictability. That's what the markets need. That's what corporations need. Well, that's exactly what they're not getting.
And again, what everybody knew they were not going to get for the past year, or what everybody should have known, that you're going to hit these tariffs, and that he negotiated. Again, there's no 100-year plan. It's just he's going to negotiate the way he negotiates, and it's going to take wild twists and turns.
All right, President Trump's trade policy has even rattled some of his own allies, as both Republican lawmakers and business executives have flooded the White House with calls of concern. The Wall Street Journal reports senior officials, including White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, have received panicked calls from chief executives and lobbyists who have urged the administration to calm jittery markets by outlining a more predictable tariff agenda. According to people familiar with discussions, many in the business community have abandoned efforts to get the president to reverse course on trade, instead pleading with the White House for clarity on his approach. The People said. The paper continues. The mixed messages from the president and his advisors have raised concerns among some Republicans that Trump lacks a cohesive economic plan. And the Wall Street Journal's editorial board is asking, how do you like the trade war now? Its piece reads in part, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said over the weekend that the president's tariffs would make some foreign products more expensive, but American products will get cheaper. Huh? Companies that use foreign components will have to raise prices or swallow narrower profit margins. Does Mr. Lutnick understand, commerce? The trouble with trade wars is that once they begin, they can quickly escalate and get out of control. All the more so when politicians are nearing an election campaign, as Canada now is, or when Mr. Trump behaves as if his manhood is implicated because a foreign nation won't take his nasty border taxes lying down. We said from the beginning that this North American trade war is the dumbest in history, and we were being kind.
That's Wall Street Journal editorial page. Obviously, the conservative voice, really, intellectual conservative voice, and the voice of most conservatives and traders on Wall Street.
Joe mentioned the coverage yesterday on Msnbc. Here's some of the reaction from senior economics reporter Steve Leisman.
What President Trump is doing is insane. It is absolutely insane. It is about the 8th reason we've had for the tariffs. And now he's saying he's putting 50% tariffs on Canada unless they agree to become the 51st state. That is insane. There is just no other way of describing it. And the trouble, Kelly, is that it shows there are no bounds around President Trump. This is very different from the first administration, where there were people around him who seemed to, I don't know what the word is, but smooth over some of the edges now. And the other thing that's not talked about, Kelly, is what's going on within the administration in terms of how they're treating the Constitution and laws. I think all of that is bad for the attraction of capital.
David Ignatius, we actually turned on CNBC yesterday, something that